Studio's live.
Taking you further.
Studio.
Smooth 98.1, love music, love life. You're very welcome to today's edition of Freshly Pressed 981. I'm Ayo Myra Essay with.
Valentine Ohu, good morning.
On today's show, we have a very distinguished analyst joining us, Lakunle. Good morning, Lakunle. It's so good to have you on the show.
Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Val.
Good morning.
Good morning, Devo.
Yeah.
And good morning, Lagos.
Excellent. All right. Good morning, Divo. You're most welcome, Divo Korea.
Morning Lagos, morning Hawaii, Lakunde, Eku, you get dollar.
You get dollar. All right. That seems to be the big question this morning, but we'll delve into the details of our stories in a moment. Before then, just to let you know, you can catch the show live on our YouTube channel right now, youtube.com/smooth981FM Lagos.
You can also send messages through WhatsApp 0809-444-0981.
All right, let's move on to our first story. Fresh Varsity strike looms. A fresh Varsity strike looms. Federal government ASU resume fight on payment platforms. I don't think this headline is a surprise, Lakunle. When when there was a truce in December of 2020, a number of people did say that even though it looked like they were going to be calling off the strike that had gone on for about 9 months, it was good to see that they'd come to some form of agreement. However, the federal government yesterday denied allegations that had been made by the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASU, saying that a number of allegations. They accused the government of not paying the earned academic allowances as contained in the agreement. Essentially, they say that the federal government has breached the agreement signed on the 24th of December 2020. On its own side, the federal government have come out to say, actually, that's not true. They're launching an investigation and they're saying that they've done, they have met the terms of the agreement. Please take us through the story.
Truce
Yeah.
or Rus?
Truce or ruse? That's the word of the day. That's the phrase of the day. Truce or ruse?
Somewhere in the middle.
Ruse.
So here we go again. ASU, FG, it's been one of the most recurring big elephants in the Nigerian room. And one must be very careful because when two elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers. Beyond the students, which is the primary reason for having universities who suffer all those things, there are so many other economic activities that are tied around studentship, the people who sell food, who sell things in the campuses, who also lose their source of livelihood.
Yep.
I'm starting from there so that we can see how big the issue really is.
Yep.
Okay, so when we take all of those things into recognition, here in this story, it's a matter of brick brat. You did this, I didn't do it. Argument upon argument. What does it cost these two people to sit together and iron this out? Yes, we know that universities are underfunded. The university must prove beyond reasonable doubt that they are underfunded. Let us see what they have done with the little they have got first, because that's government's argument on that.
Okay.
2, you must pay a man his wages. You have agreed, pay them. If there is no money, we were here on Monday, we were talking about government's communication methods and procedures. Communicate, talk to these people. Look, we agreed to pay you 100 naira. We don't have 100 naira now, it is 40 naira we have. Let us give you that. It is no unreasonable person will say that they are not working, but when you keep quiet, it gives room for them to do this. The only thing in all of this that I have an issue is ASU insisting that they must develop a software which they will give government to be processing
That's
their
UTAS.
payroll. Yes,
So
I don't think that anywhere in the world it is employees that will determine how or
Not
what
exactly.
platform they will use to pay. Look, if the government says this is what I want to use, it is, yes, you can lean on them.
Yes.
Hold one moment. You can lean on them to say, look, let's be sure that what you are using is doing all the things that we should do. The cost, efforts, energy they have put into developing UTAS, I'm sure they would have spent less into making sure that government IPs does what they are spending and on UTAS
So
to do.
government IPs does not only is not precluded to universities.
Yes, it
includes
is
service
all
sectors.
government
So
employees.
it's a broader spectrum.
Exactly.
than
So
UTAS.
yes. So it's on that basis that government should say, this is how I want to be paying my employees. If they were not government employees, yes, if they were standalones and they fund themselves, we won't be having this conversation.
Okay. Since we're having a conversation about this, I recall during the many conversations with ASU, with the federal government and ASU, UTAS was brought to the table.
Yeah.
And they did consider it. So it wasn't as if, they're not saying that pay us this particular way. They're just saying that they, and some of the things they've highlighted in the report today are the concerns they shared about EPs, which is that it was going to be discriminatory in terms of its payment of staff, which they say has happened. And they said that it would mean the federal government would not be very straightforward with the payment of their wages. There are concerns around this, and unfortunately, a few months down the line, 7 months down the line, they're encountering, according to ASU, these challenges. With UTAS, what the government has said is that UTAS does not provide a mechanism that would enable deduction of taxes, which ASU have come out to say that's untrue. That's Professor Oshodeke, who is the president of ASU, saying that that's not true. There's deduction of taxes. So if they came to a round table, they explored UTAS, explored EPs, because that's still the big challenge here. It's not ASU forcing their own technology on the government. It is saying let's come to a middle ground. So that's why I wanted to just clarify that it's not.
So what my point in all of this is this: that let us imagine, all right, that this organization says I'm going to use a certain software to pay you, and then there's a disagreement about something about the payments. Do you then go outside as a union to go and bring something and give the organization, say this is what you must use to pay us? I'm saying, yes, you may,
Yes.
but then the efforts it costs you to do that.
They've been using it.
Which one?
The UTAS
Where?
in universities.
When?
It's been their system. So the thing that
I'm saying government is the owner of the university. There was a time government gives them money. Go and pay as you want.
Yes. So
now hold on.
Question is, sorry, 1 second. The real question is if they are pushing for autonomy of universities, because it's one of some of the conversations that have come up, even on the part of the government, for universities to fund themselves. Are you going to now restrict them to using your system that you created?
No.
That you're proposing that at some point you guys could actually stand on your own.
No. At the moment, we're talking of the moment. Today, the employer of the lecturers and all employees in the university is the federal government of Nigeria.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes.
As of today,
yes,
the government is their employer.
Agreed.
And pays them their salary from a central point just like they pay everybody else.
Agreed.
Yes?
Yes.
So if that happens, so when there's that autonomy, everybody can then go ahead and choose whatever system they want to use to pay.
Yes.
But as of today, where the government is the one that takes money from its pocket to pay them.
I also agree that ASU
exactly.
they have their own issues.
So ASU need to, in my opinion, step back a little bit on this UTAS thing, spend more energy in getting IPs to do what it should do.
All right.
And then when we get to the point of autonomy, when they get the autonomy, they can go whichever way. But the most important thing in all of this is that we want to appeal to the government and ASU. The students have lost 2 years already.
A lot.
A case in point, I know someone who entered university in 2019. This is 2021.
Yeah.
The person is still in 100 level.
That's such a shame. Well, this is a question from Tunde Alao. Do university lecturers get paid for time they're on strike?
They do.
Yes, that's the unfortunate thing.
Exactly.
All right, let's move on to our next story, shall we? Jivo, CBN, Central Bank of Nigeria, bans sales of forex to BDCs, that's bird exchange operators. They're saying that the parallel market has become a conduit for illicit forex flows and graft. They mentioned that some international organizations and donor agencies, embassies and donor agencies, have been complicit in the illegal forex transactions. And they also say from now they're no longer processing applications for BDC licenses in the country. Please, I'd love to hear your take on this one.
Well, the regulator, that's the Central Bank of Nigeria, has wielded this big stick, as they do often whenever they believe according to them, that their parameters are ripe for an action to be taking place. Now, in this situation, the central bank governor, Governor Emefiele, was speaking um, in a session yesterday, which was live, broadcast to the whole country via many stations. And he spoke about the banning of sales of FX, that's Forex, foreign exchange, to BDCs. As you know, many people were able to access foreign exchange within the country through banks and BDCs prior to this time. However, they said that due to from the investigation, the illicit uh, sales that have been taking place and flows and a lot of graft that have been taking place with the BDCs, it's time for a policy change. And in that instance, one, there will be no more applications for new BDCs, neither will there be renewals because they're going to stop the flow, which they normally do weekly to BDCs, about I think about $20,000 per BDC. Now, the whole idea behind the market is that through the BDCs and the banks, foreign exchange would have been made available to the country. Now, mind you, the way the economy works, we don't have an infinite supply of foreign exchange. The country gets a lot of this foreign exchange from, what do you call it, exports, one, to our sale of crude. No, not imports, exports.
Yes.
Our sale of crude, etc. And then also the one that comes in from corporates, etc., blah, blah, blah. Now, what they do is that they ration it to ensure that, first of all, the areas that most need it, like what they refer to as invisibles, when you're paying for medical bills, you're buying things people need to buy. I mean, the country has gone through various forms or approaches for the foreign exchange market, but in that instance, they've said that the BDCs have abused the opportunity that they had. Now, what they will do now on a weekly basis, they will route that amount of money through commercial banks. Now, what are the real issues that really happened? And they were picking on some embassies and international organizations that have more or less been channeling FX flows through the black market rather than the INE window that was created for inflows, export inflows, etc. Now, but the real problem is our economy is bedeviled with multiple rates, and I think everybody understands this, because if you're in business or even if you want to buy something outside, you will come across the need to request or the sales of FX on account of, because the only way you get FX through the banks is when you're buying BTA, that's business travel allowance, PTA, personal travel allowance, which is about $4,000, I think, and you have to provide a receipt, your air ticket fare for a trip that is beyond 6 hours. Okay, let's say you're going to London, South Africa, or America, or Europe, but across this past 1 year, in the midst of COVID and the down economy, there was a surge in the sales. So it's like, that's not possible. It's obvious that something wrong is taking place, okay? We're seeing applications, but we're not seeing the trips. So they've decided to plug that gap by this ban. Now, what it also does, and that's just even one area, also, because of the multiple rates, you have the official rates, you have the INE rates, which is lower than the black market rates, which is also lower than the inflow rates. Many people, obviously, whenever there's a higher rate, that's an incentive to go and take it from somewhere else or to create some form of graft. The same thing that's going on with the petroleum sector. We sell at pump price at 165, whereas it's actually brought in at about 250 something, and it's sold at above 300 across the border. It's the same scenario. Now, with this move, what they'll be doing is that they believe that pushing it through banks will be more transparent, be more accountable. Banks are all over the nation, so it should be easy for human beings, for Nigerians to be able to access it. However, obviously, once you have plugged what used to exist in about 1,400 BDCs nationwide, you're obviously going to create an incentive for a premium black market out there. Because sometimes, and I use the word carefully, sometimes it's not as easy to get money from the banks. Two, it's not just, what do you call it, Pete travels that people need FX for. So for those who still need FX for other reasons, like if you want to buy anything or you're in business and you remember there's limited supply, so it's not all the time that you apply that you get.
Yes.
That's where the problem lies. So all those people, they have to look elsewhere. Remember, the aviation industry complained that they were not getting sufficient effort to be able to take care of their foreign equipment requests,
Yes, and
their
all that.
foreign maintenance fees and all of that. So it's the economy as a whole that will suffer. However, this pinch will only, hopefully, will only be around for this initial period, and then with time, if CBN is able to step up the supply to the banks, it should bring it down at some point. However, the greater issue is if the country is not able, and this is where the balance of trade comes in, if we're not able to diversify more ways of people of production or bringing in FX into the country, and this is a policy issue, it limits the supply and keeps this new black market that will emerge floating,
Yeah.
because people will do whatever it takes
So
just to
what
get
do you
FX.
think how do you think the CBN would curtail the the spread of this premium black market you've mentioned? That's number one.
Yes.
Then number two, please highlight from this article some of the things that the CBN has said the banks will do to ensure that it's easier for people to access FX advance.
I think about $75 million. I'm not sure of the amount. Like I said, about 1,500 BDCs nationwide who get about $20,000 weekly from the CBN. This will now be channeled through banks.
Okay.
So it's not as if that amount is going. It's only going to be finding a new route.
Mm-hmm.
However, the real issue here is the CBN obviously has been taking some steps since the beginning of the year to kind of not manage the float of the naira. That's exchange rates. Because if we can harmonize all the rates that we have in the markets, okay, what happens is that when there's a harmonized rate, there's no need for the black market anymore.
Yeah.
Anywhere you go to, you will get it at the same
Plus,
rate.
it will enable them track all the transactions.
Yes, and I know they've been doing it carefully and skillfully, and hopefully we will get to a point that whichever way you turn, the rate will be the same.
The same. All right, let me just mention to people who are out there and thinking, well, my bank doesn't come through all the time. The CBN has said that customers not attended to by banks are to report to the CBN
Yes.
through a toll-free number. It's 0700 2255226, or email cbd@cbn.gov.ng. We'll probably put this on our WhatsApp story, because
Yes,
I know
we
some
should.
people might ask about that. Then they've asked that all banks should have a dedicated teller, to this. So just a few things to assure people at least who are listening.
Let's take a quick break. You're listening to Freshly Pressed 981. We'll be back to take your messages.
We're out of time. We're out
place
of
is hot.
time. Yeah, sorry about that.
State financial zero
storm.
refunds and pay your bills, rent, school fees application. We are making it easy for you.
Visit our website www.pagefinancials.com
Messages,
or
please.
call 01-700-7243. Page Financials, taking you forward.
You're tuned in and listening to Smooth Breakfast, Freshly Pressed 981 with detailed analysis provided by Divo Okore and Lakule. Good morning. Messages here on WhatsApp. Shadow from Ilukweju says Lakule always comes 100% on both sides. There are knocks and he gave it on equal measure. He says communication is key. If you properly and wholesomely communicate on both sides and act with utmost regard for fairness and understanding for both sides of the argument, that there shouldn't be a back and forth between us and the government.
Yinka says, I think if the CBN can follow this through, it might work out for us positively. How do we explain that BUC get dollars at 400 naira and sell at 500 naira? That's criminal. Mr. Bismarck said the BDCs rose from 74 to over 600. That's a lazy way of making money and at the same time driving daggers into the naira. Let's just hope the bank managers don't run rogue at some point, because it's going to end in fisticuffs inside banking halls.
He expresses his cynicism as usual about the CBN hotline. It says, let's try.
They play music.
Bibi says, Benito actually says, last, the black market is open to all, but the black market is not and does not support open enterprise. It should be well regulated with single, universal, and mono exchange rates.
Thank you. Very quickly, let's touch on these stories. Presidency threatens to sanction staff found leaking classified information. Straightforward story, luckily. They're saying to checkmate those who handle sensitive information. They've called them in and said there'll be stiff measures if they find them wanting.
It's like secret.
That's
But
what I
anyway,
thought.
that crossed my mind.
Go on, please.
Funny enough, I think I agree with the government on this. It is one of the arguments government put forward in sanctioning social media platforms. because it was one of the avenues that in the last 2-3 years thereabout particularly, that you wake up and you see several classified government memos, documents being bandied about. And whether we agree with the content of the documents or not, I think it's a wrong thing to do. From government level, if I was in government, I'll probably be pushing that it should be placed on one of as one of the things on the treasonable felony lists.
In government legal,
Because
they call it matters of national security.
exactly, because if as a government official I do at that level, if I don't agree with a policy to be made, at the point of the discussion I should have been able to express my points of disagreement. And once anything has gone out, I shouldn't be the one putting out that information in that raw form.
Right.
It might be misinterpreted. So I think that the government has done the right thing with this, and that they should actually go through with this, if possible, even retrospectively look at some of these things and punish some people, so that they will know that it's something that we should not be doing.
I think it's based on lessons they've learned.
Yes, absolutely. All right, let's move on to our next story, Divo. Very quickly, Shibanda says, federal government ready to tackle inflation, other challenges of food security. Yesterday, we spoke in detail about how food inflation has gone up by, the food prices have gone up by 253% in some areas, 90% in others. Now, the vice president, while speaking at an event, said that the actions the federal government has put in plans to ensure that they cushion the effect of, or actually to tackle inflation and other food security challenges. What's your take on this?
Yes, he spoke to one of the big issues of social economy, and that has to do with food security. That's enough food for everyone. Remember, when we speak of everyone, we're talking about 200 million Nigerians now, and what that means is to be able to be enough, which is where the security comes in. You're talking to the access, and you're speaking to the availability. Obviously, everybody's aware of how high the price of food has been for almost up to a year right now, and it has really beaten on the economy and Nigerians. And despite the fact that the federal government is prioritizing 40 food systems, okay, and how they intend to introduce innovation and technology to drive what we refer to as scale, meaning whatever we're doing now, let's see how we can scale it up. They said this is to complement the ERGP, that's the Economic Growth Plan, which is supposed to address poverty reduction. However, just to cap this story off, after saying all these nice things, okay, we normally hit the government for they're in the business of sound bites. They say one thing, another thing happens. The elephant in the room was not discussed because he was at a UN food forum, which was the insecurity. Now, to a large extent, the insecurity in the nation has directly affected the supply chain for food in the country, from production, as you know, in some places like Yobe, when farmers were slaughtered, Benue, where farmers have had constant attacks with herdsmen, to processing and the distribution, where because of the insecurity and the banditry on the roads or the terrorists roaming about, those who have trucks cannot even get from point A to point B, which has led to a lot of inability.
There's also the issue of corruption, because many people complain about actually too many security men on the road. I'm talking about, when I say security, I mean security operatives.
Yes,
There's different
checkpoints,
customs, police, and all that, collecting money, calling ambiguous names that don't make sense, and ask you to pay a certain fee. If not, they'll seize you or impound your vehicle.
Even I wouldn't even call that corruption, because that's the government trying to arrest the
That's
security.
corruption.
No, I'm coming.
Yes.
However, when you have multiple stops, every 1 kilometer there's a stop, you pay something. It forms an exploitative taxation at the end of the day for those who are in the distribution chain. So at the end of the day, it doesn't get to us, or it gets to us at a very high price, and everyone, no one is left out that's affected in this.
All right, Kenneth Okoji says, went to one of the banks yesterday for my PTA. Surprisingly, I got it in an hour. Kudos.
You see, the
That's
banks
kind
are
of,
performing.
yeah, that's kind of
Well
what
done.
like, yeah.
Although there's talk of the allocation not being enough. Except for from Q, for instance, the CBN gives allocation of 300,000 per month, right? And then per quarter to SMEs about 30,000, and I don't know how that's enough.
People
But
should.
no, the truth is, like I said before, there's limited supply.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to this next one. New Telegraph. NBA drags Buhari, NCC, 2 others to court over Twitter ban. Wow. Lakule, what are your thoughts on this, please?
The Attorney General of the Federation, Mr. Malami SAN, has said that government did not government has not banned us from using Twitter.
No, they
In
said
quotes. That's what he said.
government should not, do not stop us from using it.
From using Twitter. That's what he said.
Alright.
So based on that statement, I would then assume that the courts will probably just say that what have you come to argue about? Okay. But the truth about the whole thing is that we know what this thing is all about. Let us keep testing our laws. Let us test whether a ministerial directive should take effect without a court backing.
Yes.
Because that is what this is. There is no law.
But the lawyers, the NBA, Nigerian Bar Association, don't seem like they are testing anything.
No, I'm saying
they seem like, hold on,
Okay.
they are positioning themselves as coming from the part of law, from the Constitution. They said justifying the filing of the suit. The lawyers said noted that by virtue of paragraph 3E of the Fundamental Rights Enforcement Procedure Rules of 2009, any civil society, human rights group or association can file an action to enforce the fundamental rights of any group of persons or person,
granted.
which means you're infringing on human rights.
Yes.
It's
So,
breaking the law.
yeah, so we are testing
No.
that. We are
Okay.
testing that statement
Yes.
to say that this is what the law says. Court interpret it as it says exactly that. So that is what it is. So let's keep. You know, there is a ministerial directive that says stop giving access to Nigerians to this thing. It was not backed by any law.
Yes.
So let us test that also in court to say, can a minister stand up, wake up from his dreams, and make a pronouncement and it becomes effective? Let's keep testing this thing. It's helping to grow our laws. It's helping to grow our democracy as well, so that we can know that we are not building strong men. We are building institutions. This is how institutions are built.
But how long have we been in democracy? It's just unfortunate that at this point we're still testing our judiciary.
Look,
That's supposed
it's
to be, sacrosanct.
there are no
It's
it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. We're going to have to keep doing this all the time. Okay, so that's the beauty of this thing. Let's just be like that.
All right, more stories now. Additional, that's Mr. Kola Additional, who's director of Ebbing Power. He has said that the total debt, or rather, Ebbing Power, for instance, has said that the total debt the Nigerian Bulk Electricity Trading PLC (NBET) owes the power generating companies presently at 388 billion naira. According to this day, there are statements made here, presentations by Additional himself. Devo, please take us through the story.
Yes, this was on a visit by the Senate to the station, and as they were taking through, the director of Ebbing Power PLC was letting them know the challenges that they face, that MBET owes them about 388 billion, and this questions the sanctity of the contracts as well as discourages investments. Now, one of the biggest issues that they've had was gas supply, which made them lose up to about 103 megawatts since about a year or two since they took over, and about 13 billion naira was lost even this year because of this issue, despite the PLC itself investing over $3 billion in their expansion and their growth. Now, EGNI is the biggest generating company in sub-Saharan Africa, with an installed capacity of about 1,300 megawatts, but only producing they've taken it from 400 up to about 1,000. Now, what we need to understand here is that the power system, it constitutes of the gencos, who produce the transmission, which distributes it around, and then the discos, who act as your last mile around the country. Now, MBET is like the clearinghouse that connects all of them together. So when they collect the money, they kind of give back. But MBET has collected, and it's stuck. And the Junkos are like, we keep investing, but we're not getting back.
And they need the money.
And they need the money. It's their money. It's their money. So you've collected from them, but you haven't paid back.
Yes.
So this is a major problem. Now, if Egbin, the biggest, is facing this, what do you think the rest are facing? That's why many of them are demanding that they sell direct and just, I beg, if we want power, come to us, we'll give it to you.
What are we facing? No light.
That will end up in no
That's
lights.
what it's going to end up
somewhere.
as. Yep.
Thank you. Thank you, Divo. Thank you, Lakule. Thank you so much for please helping us to manage the time. Stay with us here on Smooth Breakfast, freshly pressed 981. Check out the headlines on our social media platforms. We'll be taking the stories, or rather the messages you've sent that we couldn't touch on in 10 minutes for Lagos Talks 981.
That's right. Please join us then, and please use the telephone line as well, 01448991.
Quick access to loans from Page
Thank you.
Financials.
Thank you.
Page Financials. further.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
The headline.